Corporate Scrutiny Committee meeting. As you know, this is being held under the government guidance for virtual meetings. I'm not sure whether Mr. Taylor wants to talk you through those at all, and then we'll take a register of the members present where they can see or hear.
Yes, Chairman, really just to say the meeting's been recorded and the recording will be on the Council's YouTube channel in a couple of days. Over to you, Chairman.
Okay, can I just check with people that are present that they can see and hear everything? So I guess I can. Councillor Lilly?
Yes, Brian, I can see and hear everything. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Barber?
Good afternoon. Yes, I can see and hear everything. Hello, everybody.
Thank you. Councillor Grimes?
Yes, Chairman, can see and hear everything. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Bruce?
Good afternoon, Chairman. Yep. Councillor Bruce, Bridgewater Fairfax. I can hear and see everything. Thank you.
Okay, I don't notice Councillor Hendry here. I'm assuming he's not. Councillor Dyer, neither I can see. Councillor Levy, neither. Councillor Filmer, I can see.
Thank you, Chairman. Yes, I can certainly see and hear yourself as well. Thanks.
Thank you. Councillor Revens.
Good afternoon, Mr. Chairman. Just Bill Revens representing North Petherton, confirming I can see and hear everything.
And Councillor Finneran.
Good afternoon, Chairman. Yes, I can see and hear everybody fine. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Can I just check whether there are any given apologies today?
Yes, Chairman. Apologies from Councillor Liv Levy.
Okay, and we accept those apologies. Urgent business. I'm not aware of any urgent business today. Public speaking time. I'm not aware of any public speakers today. Any declarations of interest people want to alert us to? I see no indications for that. So we'll go straight on in that case to the first item on the agenda, which is the only real item on today's agenda, which is the procedure for council meetings. Just to remind people that Councillor Duddridge is with us today as well. He's the portfolio holder whose portfolio includes digital delivery. But the report that has been presented to you was done by Rose, but Andrew Melhuish will be responding to it for us today. And I will also then go to Councillor Evans after that to take us back to the original motion, which is why it's here in the first place, which came from two members of his group. So could I first go over to Mr. Melhuish to raise any points in the report that you all have read, which we want to be considering? Thank you.
Thank you very much, Chairman. Good afternoon, members. As I'm sure most members will remember, back in December 2019, there was a motion to council as per the 4 points raised in the report that you've got in front of you. And as Councillor Smedley said there, Rose Stokes, the scrutiny officer, has done considerable amount of research, and there were a number of surveys, both to members of the public and also to councillors seeking their views on some of the issues that had been raised through the motion. That's sort of left then really with sort of four key areas for investigation and for further comment from the committee. One was around the live streaming of audio meetings. Obviously now we've started to record all of our meetings. COVID has kind of accelerated perhaps any programme that we had originally envisaged when this motion first came before us for holding meetings in this manner. So we are in a slightly different place than we were before. But I think it's important not to lose that place when we move forward, when we perhaps have some kind of further clarity from government on COVID and the restrictions around holding meetings in the future. Obviously, with that came the temporary legislation that's due to expire in May 2021. So again, that is a factor that we need to be mindful of. And I'll talk about that when I come to do some sort of summing up of some of the points that you may wish to consider. One of the other issues that was looked at was improving councillor representation on the council. And I think that the report quite clearly sets out that perhaps this is something that may be difficult to achieve as an authority, because a lot of the selection process is down to particular political groups and obviously people choosing to stand as independent councillors. And I think it's really we're in the hands of groups locally as to how that sort of happens. Obviously, it's worth pointing out that most recently at the council elections last year, there were a number of younger members who joined the council, and representation from a wider group as well. So, as I say, it's happened, but it's probably just happened because we're then down to votes and people getting elected. So it is always difficult to control that. One of the other issues was talking about public participation and increasing that. Obviously, we see that a lot at the planning committee. I think that that's obviously well attended by members of the public. And I think anywhere else it will depend on the topic that's before us. Most recently, this committee did consider a call-in Bridge, and that obviously attracted a lot of public interest and was well attended. And certainly looking at the YouTube views, that video was well viewed by the local community. So certainly members of the public are taking advantage of using that channel and looking at what's taken place at the council. One of the other things as well is when we first started with Skype, and obviously now we've migrated over to Teams, we only allowed people, or we only really dialed people in. So we would, as officers, have a list of phone numbers of people who wanted to attend the meeting, and then we would call them in and they would speak on the phone, but they wouldn't be able to see the meeting. We trialled at the last development committee inviting some speakers to come along and join the meeting, so they actually sat on the Teams call as we all are here today, and we had some very positive feedback from the two speakers. So what we will intend to do, just as a sort of as we move forward now with all of our meetings, we will in fact we will offer people the facility to have the Teams appointment, the calendar appointment, and then we as officers will be in a position where we'll be able to provide control to keep them muted, and just obviously if we think that they're perhaps holding up a banner at the back that's got some unpleasant comments, that kind of thing, we can have them removed. And then when they come to the meeting to start with, they can wait in the lobby. So members of the committee would be able to come in and carry on the conversations as they have done at the start here. And then as soon as the meeting starts, we could admit them. So I think that's something we will now start to offer, and that will make members of the public feel a little bit more engaged, because I know there were a few issues with some of the meetings where they were saying, I can only sort of hear and don't really see the full and don't get the full picture. So that's that point. And then just finally, the motion was looking at changing the timings and location of future council meetings. And I think that certainly from the majority of responses from members, it was felt that daytime meetings were still the best way to proceed. And I know there are a number of members who are also involved quite considerably with their local parishes and town councils. So it then provides a difficulty for holding those meetings. So it may be something that we do have to, we may want to do for certain meetings, and maybe it is on a case-by-case basis, certain meetings, certain topics, we may say, well, it might be better, we might get better levels of engagement, but it's always difficult to predict that. And I think as well, as we move forward with the location of council meetings at the moment, obviously everything's being done virtually. We may have to have a time where we perhaps want to look at hybrid meetings, whereby we have if for example, you can have a maximum of say 6 people in the Sedgemoor room, you have 6 people in the Sedgemoor room, key members and key officers, and then everybody else is coming in via Teams. I think we probably won't know the answer to that until we know where we are with COVID and where we are with the regulations. So coming out of the report, the very comprehensive report that you have, I think that there are probably a few issues that you may wish to consider. One of those is around live streaming. As I say, what we're offering at the moment does seem to be getting used and viewed by members of the public, so that is working well. I think any live streaming that we do, we'll have to properly assess the resources that we need for that, whether that will be additional equipment and or additional staff to sort of be a producer kind of a role, that kind of thing. One of the other things that was picked up, and I didn't really mention in the report, was the call for, particularly this is improving councillor representation, is to have a county-wide leave policy for councillors. And one of the things you may wish to consider in your recommendations, if you make some recommendations today, is actually lobbying for this to be introduced through the local government association. There was also mention in about changing the threshold on petition scheme. I think that the petition scheme is our trigger levels us in similar numbers to other authorities, so I don't see that there's much worth in changing that. I think if there is sufficient concern for an issue, particularly there was last year with the planting of more trees, a petition attracted the necessary number of signatures and came into members, and funding was set aside to support that work. And then one of the final things is, as I've just mentioned, about the legislation being there until May 2021. We'll need to keep an eye on that, because I think some of what we're doing now is working well. I certainly noticed more councillors attending meetings, more councillors attending events, got a lot of members who are coming from some of the furthest corners of the district. It means then you're not having that travel, and obviously that goes in some ways to meeting some of our climate change challenges as well. So it may well be that we want to make some recommendations, sorry, you as members from this may want to make some recommendations to lobby again the local government association to look at extending the current regulations, or extending the current regulations with some amendments to allow the hybrid meetings to take place. That's all I want to say. I'm happy to take any questions and listen to the debate. Thank you.
Okay, so thank you very much for that. I noticed Councillor Evans has his hand up, and I intend to come to Councillor Evans first in this. I just wanted to point out that I noticed Councillor Hendry has appeared. I just want to check that Councillor Hendry could see and hear everything that's going on in the meeting. Councillor Hendry?
I do apologise, Mr. Chairman. I was caught in traffic. But
you've muted yourself. And again, you've muted yourself. Luckily, I can lip read, and I could tell he could say he could see and hear everything, so that's fine. Okay, could I go to Councillor Evans first, because this obviously came out of a motion originally, and the report had addressed the items in that motion. If there's any particular questions you want to address, Mr. Melhuge, or if you want to try to take us on from the report towards some recommendations, that would also be useful. Councillor Evans.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. Yeah, very much welcome this report. It's clearly very well researched, well written, very clear report, and I welcome the time that the officer, Mrs. Stokes, has spent on it, and thank Mr. Melhuge for his presentation. Looking back at the original motion, it was so very 2019, wasn't it? And so much has changed in 2020 that means some of it is now outdated. You know, if you look at our digital engagement is so much stronger in terms of our social media presence as a council than it has been previously. The remote meetings that we've had and so on, we have gone a long way to already start to address some of these issues, and that's positive. When I look at the next steps that are at the end of the report on page 7, I think those would make very good suggested outcomes that we as a committee would like to put forward. But there's a couple of perhaps points that I would like to make on the petition issue. I can only recall one petition in the last 6 years that I've been a Sedgemoor District Councillor coming before the council. I wonder if officers or members could remind me of if that scheme has ever been used before. I also felt that public speaking, with the exception of development control. We rarely see members of the public coming to speak at our council meetings, and whether we could do more to promote that as an option to involve people more in our decision-making process. I fully take on board the comments in the report and from Mr. Melhuish about part of the solution of having a better demographic representation being in the hands of the political parties, and that is absolutely true. The point was made about the composition of my group, and when it was debated at full council. Equally well, when we looked at the numbers, if we had an extra, I think it was 5 councillors elected who were closest to being elected from my party, it actually would have been parity, because the next 5 would have all been women. So you do take your money and take your choice. It's in the hands of the electorate as much as the political parties as well. Though I do recall that when we held an event to encourage people to stand, the document that came with it featured a man of middle age in a suit with bald hair and a beard. Now I'm fully recognise the achievement of bald-headed men with beards towards this council. However, it doesn't perhaps reflect the full diversity and demographic makeup of our population. I also noticed that event was held in the February before the elections, when most parties had already picked their candidates and were probably just doing arm twisting for a few more people to make up a slate. So it was only a month before the notice of election, which is, it needs to be earlier in the process, and only speakers from the Labour Party and the Conservative Party were at that. The other groups weren't involved with that, which was disappointing. And perhaps we could think about how we could encourage a wider range of people to be involved in that process. However, I'm fully happy to make a proposal that we put forward I think it's 7 recommendations that are or possible ideas that are in the report as formal recommendations from this committee to go forward and hopefully to try and improve public participation and open up the council even more. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Okay, thank you very much for that. Any other members of the committee like to either ask Mr. Melhuish any questions or comment on Councillor Evans's proposal, or maybe second Councillor Evans's proposal? If you could either indicate with your hand signalling device or write your name in the chat box. Councillor Finneran.
Yes, I support what's been said, and I would second Councillor Evans's proposal.
Okay, Councillor Filmer.
Yeah, thank you, Chairman. I think, like the other councillors, I think the report that's been put together is very well researched and certainly came up with some useful information for us all to consider today. I don't have a problem with the recommendations. The only thing, obviously, in terms of the holding meetings in different locations, obviously that will be a post current situation time, because obviously we don't know where we're going for the next few weeks and months, but I'm sure it's something we could look at and see how that works. I guess the one issue that might be thrown up by it potentially would be if we do go for the live streaming, which I hope we are able to. That will mean equipment which probably may well be based in the council chamber, and being able to move that might be something we'll have to take into consideration when we're acquiring that equipment as to what facilities we need. So I think it's a really positive way forward, and hopefully most members can support it.
Yeah, thank you. Councillor Lilly.
Thanks, Brian. Just wanted to say that I also endorse it. I think it's a really balanced, well-written report. It's really comprehensive. It's interesting how, like you said, we've all touched upon how it's changed. The pace of change has altered what the report from where it started from to where we are now. And I think it is very much work in progress with all this, and we won't know until sort of next year, 2021, where we are with future meetings and where they're held, like Councillor Filmer said. But yeah, we fully endorse the report and support it.
Thank you. Councillor Bruce.
Am I muted or unmuted now?
We can hear you.
Okay, it was about the current representation. Whether the report talks about male-female representation, doesn't talk at all about ethnicity or age or disability. How do we compare our current representation with residents in Sedgemoor? Has that been looked at all?
Mr. Mulhughes?
It's not something that was picked up in the report, so the answer to that would be no. But I think it's, I mean, it's something we could look at to do a comparison to see where we are.
I think I would like to see that possibly included in the recommendations, that we also look at that side of things, and possibly look at how if our representation is not sufficient in that aspect, how we can work towards improving that, perhaps working with local community groups, specifically inviting those community groups to information sessions about how to become a councillor, or maybe sending an elections officer into those community groups to talk to them about how best to access their members, that sort of thing.
Yeah, no, absolutely. We used to, some years back, we used to work with a couple of the local primary schools to hold sessions of where they would vote to elect a school council. And that was trying at that time to sort of get into sort of the younger age group early on, really, and then also to get them talking to parents in the hope that it would perhaps generate some parents to come forward. But I'm not sure if that effect was really felt at all. But it's not something that's been requested of us in recent times. But I know that was something that was done at the time. As I say, we'll go back to the fact it is we can do sessions, and I take the point from Councillor Evans that perhaps the timing of our session was a little too late, and that's something we can pick up, or we can pick up for the next elections. Although the form of which those will take, I don't know, but obviously that is still something that we could do, and we would continue to do. Although the turnout wasn't brilliant, wasn't high, it still reached a group of people. So, and there are a few people from that group who were elected to this council. So there, you hope that by giving that positive information about the role and the work of the council, that has encouraged people to stand. So, but absolutely, yes, it is, making it more that it goes out to everybody and everybody is aware. We do do quite a bit of work. There is a customer panel whereby there are about 100 odd people that we consult with on various issues around all sorts of service decisions that we're going to make and documents that we're going to produce. So it may be that we can, now that that's up and established, when we need to do this again, we can make use of that customer panel to sort of gauge some more views. And certainly Angela Farmer, working with the voluntary sector and things like the Older People's Forum and some of the other groups that she's involved with, I think that there's probably some sort of lines of communication we can have to them. And then obviously one of the other things is making use of our social media platforms. And I will confess that I think that we need to sort of up our game a little bit with regards to the use of social media. It's sometimes a bit of an afterthought. Oh, I could have put a tweet out, or I could have put something on Facebook, that kind of thing. And I think it's a bit of my generational view isn't social media, I'm afraid to say. I've been around a bit too long. Social media doesn't feature quite highly on my agenda, but I think it needs to feature on what we do when we do it, even for the publicity around our meetings. And I think that that's something that we need to pick up as well, that we do a bit more advertising of what actually is being done, what the decisions we are taking. And I think if we just do some of those sort of tweets and so on out there, that starts to grow the interest from members of the public, and then it may lead in time to people coming forward to stand for election.
I think, can I come back on that? Just
come back. I've got two more speakers after you, but come on. Yeah.
Thank you. In terms of the representation, I take your point, as Bill said earlier, about the political parties and how much there is a limit to what an authority can do to increase the participation. But I think there is a lot more that could be done, a little bit more at least, in terms of reaching out to people, improving the information that's available on the website in terms of what it means to be a councillor, doing things like, I don't know, a day in the life of a councillor, putting a little video on there to show people what it's really like to be a councillor. Reaching out to employers, working with employers to show them how it can benefit them if their employee becomes a councillor. and what it means in terms of the personal development of that person that's working for them. And I think there is a lot more that could be done. I think it's a bit easy to sit back and say it's not our problem.
Okay, Councillor Revens.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Yeah, fully endorse and accept what Councillor Bruce has suggested. And if I may amend my motion to include an extra bullet point that would include working with the political groups to improve the demographic balance of the council members, including I don't know whether we need to define all the characteristics, but yeah, yeah, we know we have LGBT plus councillors. We know we have one BME councillor. I'm sure we have disabled councillors on the council, but it's all those protected groups that we just need to make sure are adequately represented, as Councillor Bruce has suggested. I'd be happy to accept that amendment on. Just one other point that I'd forgotten to make was that there was at Somerset County Council last week a leave policy put forwards for parental and carers leave that may well be a policy that we could look at and adopt, as well as doing the lobbying of government for a comprehensive policy nationwide. We can do something locally on that as well, so I'd perhaps add that one in as well.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Grimes.
Thank you, Chairman. Yes, just to say that I think it was a very good report, and I do tend to agree with all the comments of my fellow councillors. I do have a concern about different times and different meetings, but as has been already alluded to, I think this can be sorted out at a later date. But apart from that, very good report. Thank you, Chairman.
Okay, so I think we have a proposal with an amendment and then a second, and most people seem to be indicating that that's in favour. We have the extra amendment which suggests that a wider engagement with political groupings was mentioned, but I guess also with the wider community, of course, to do that. I mean, it works well with political groupings. For instance, in the Labour selection process, we did have a kind of a discrimination process to encourage male, female, and we've ended up with even balance between the two in every ward. We have a mix of male, female, but we need to engage in the wider community who don't necessarily see that as the only way into council representation. So by wider community engagement, I think is what you're all suggesting then, the steps suggested by Councillor Bruce and supported by Councillor Evans. Is there any further points people want to raise? Otherwise, I'll put that to a vote. No, so people are clear. Mr. Melhewis, you want to clarify? They're clear that the bullet points at the end of the report are what Councillor Evans is putting forward, with the additional points about community engagement to promote the role of a councillor.
Yes, absolutely. That's well summed up, Chairman. And those recommendations will then, as the report says, will go forward to executive for their consideration. So that will be later in December.
Okay. Would you like me to go through members individually, or can I tell by the look on your faces that that's unanimous?
Chairman, there's no need to go through all the members. Just if it's any dissenters, you can take it as being read, Chairman.
Okay, I believe that that's support for that initiative, and the recommendation will go forward to executive for further consideration and action through the council then. Okay, thank you very much for that. The other item on today's agenda, on today's rather short agenda, is the work programme. Mr. Melhewis will just take us through that a minute. There's only really two meetings we're particularly looking at, and they sort of speak for themselves, because the January meeting usually involves a particular look at the state of finances, and that's often a joint meeting with committee scrutiny. We also, I think, want to look at some COVID response within that as well. And the other item that we had on our workload was to look at the town deal plan. We've put that back because they're deep into that process at the moment, and I think we need to get some response back from them before we scrutinise anything, to be honest. Mr. Melhewis, anything you want to add to that?
No, nothing further to add, Chairman. Thank you.
So are there any members here that feel that we should be doing anything different to that, who may want at this stage to add other items for our programme. I would also point out that we're in between scrutiny officers at the moment as well. So although Rose did leave us with a lot of work done for where we are, we don't we're not in a position to offer full capacity on scrutiny at the moment. I've got to know. Yes, Councillor Finneran, is that? Sorry, the chat box doesn't have the beard on it, so it's a different. It's you, Councillor Finneran.
I'll get that amended. Yes, yeah, it was really at our first meeting we'd mentioned about CIL spending, and as I understand it, there's no process in place yet for the spending of CIL monies within the authority, and we will be marching rapidly towards the time limit on it if we're not careful. So I was really finding out whether anything has been moved forward on that.
Mr. Belhuis?
No, I have no updates. I was just looking in the file just to see if there was anything that was relating to that. There isn't anything currently. Members may wish to at one of their next meetings. I think it would probably be the meeting in February to request an update on where that is, and then whether that leads to another piece of work. But it may be that we can invite members of the planning policy team to come forward then and just to give an update.
Okay, would other members be okay with that, bringing forward a sole update, or are there other items other members would like us to consider or to bring to that particular February meeting? No, so I suspect that we have those two meetings scanned out now, and the January meeting includes the financial update. The February one includes the SIL report, and if something on the town deal comes forward. Nothing else from anybody? No. In fact, therefore, I think that's the end of today's meeting. In that case, so thank you all very much for attending and for looking at those recommendations. Thank you very much.